Hello and welcome to our grammar review for English 1002's final test. Your final grammar test will test you on units 5, 6, 7, and 8 from our online grammar modules. And I've put together this Microsoft Word document as a quick review form that you can have up on your screen, or you could print a copy off and have next to you. Obviously, because your grammar test is online, and originally we were going to have it as an open book class on campus, I have to assume that however you complete this test at home will be open book. And while I cannot supervise you directly as you're writing the test, I have put some measures in place to help protect academic integrity. So I'll be explaining what the test will look like as it's on your screen so you know what to expect. Again, we have 4 units, and so what I'm going to do is have a variety of multiple choice questions covering each of those 4 units. When you see your test on the screen, you will only be able to access one question at a time. You will not be able to go back and forth to change your answers later, so you will not be able to see the new question until you answer the one that's on the screen. All right. The other thing is that the question order will be randomized, and I will have a bank of questions. So let's say, for example, there's 4 units. For the unit 5 question bank, I might have 25 different questions to pick from, but you're only going to see 10 of them, for example, right? So the point is, there's no benefit to trying to write this test with a peer because you won't be getting the same questions and it's randomized. All right, moving on. Again, your test will be multiple choice, and so what I'm going to just do now is walk you through a basic review of the main concepts of each of those 4 units. And I put some sample phrases in the document here so we can talk about them together as you review for your test. So starting with Unit 5, we have sentence problems. And the types of problems that we looked at in both of those units, we had fragments, and we had comma splices. So briefly, just to review fragments, these ones here are considered fragments because these are not complete sentences. You might hear someone give this as a response, as an answer, if you ask them a question, but technically these are not complete sentences, right? You might give the answer because quarantine, right? Maybe that's a caption you'd put on a photo that you post online, for example, or someone asks you, how are you doing? Or what are you doing? And you respond with stuck at home. In an informal conversation, that would suffice as an answer, but in written text, this is not a complete sentence. Where I eat, sleep, study, and work. Now, even though here we have a subject and a verb, the way this is written, it is not a complete sentence. This is a fragment. And then the next thing that we have here, although it is comfortable, familiar, and safe, it does not sound like a complete idea. Now, subject, verb, and object. These are necessary in a sentence. Any sentence that you have, you should be able to answer these questions. Who did it? What did they do? And are there any lonely dependent clauses? So lonely dependent clauses are phrases that sound incomplete because they're not attached to a complete thought. So we've been talking about dependent and independent clauses this semester. So a dependent clause is a phrase that must be attached to a complete thought or to an independent clause. Anyway, if we were to come back to these fragments here, I could put them together and have complete sentences, such as this one. If I say, because of quarantine, I am stuck at home where I eat, sleep, study, and work. Although it is comfortable, familiar, and safe, it gets boring. Something like that, right? So now I've combined these fragments into a complete sentence here and a complete sentence here. The ideas are complete, and now these are independent clauses. Independent, they can stand alone. if you need a review on independent and dependent clauses or subjects or verbs or objects, I strongly encourage that you go back to units 1 through 4 of our grammar modules and make sure that you're comfortable and familiar with all of these terms, because you do need to understand what they mean in order to succeed on the test. All right, moving on. Comma splices. Here we go. Comma splice is when you use commas to separate phrases in a sentence, but the commas don't belong there. If we look at this sentence here, she looks comfortable, comma, she is teaching us from home. This is considered a comma splice because the comma is not in the proper location. If you look at the list of options below, these are what we could do instead of using the comma here in this spot, right? She looks comfortable, she is teaching us from home. This is wrong. I can change this to a semicolon. This would be an okay option because we have she looks comfortable, subject, verb. Now we don't have an object, we have an adjective here because the verb look typically goes with an adjective, right? You look happy, you look sad, you look tired, you look comfortable. She looks comfortable, semicolon, she is teaching us from home. Because we have an independent clause here and an independent clause here, these are two complete thoughts, we can separate those with a semicolon. A comma is not used to separate two independent clauses. All right, so that's why that would be considered comma splice if this were just a comma instead of a semicolon. Now, the next option is instead of a semicolon, we could put a subordinating conjunction. She looks comfortable because she is teaching us from home. Subordinating conjunction. Now below, just for your review, I have a list of some common subordinating conjunctions, and so that's an option there. Moving up here, let's move on to C, a period or a full stop. She looks comfortable. She is teaching us from home. All right. You can just separate your independent clauses with punctuation like a period or full stop, however you want to call it. All right. We have two complete sentences, and that is fine. And the last option, D, a coordinating conjunction. Hopefully you remember the phrase fanboys. Coordinating conjunction. She looks comfortable, and she is teaching us from home. Or she looks comfortable for she's teaching us from home. For as in because, right? Yes. Depending on the meaning of the sentence, you might have more than one option of a coordinating conjunction or a fanboys word to use there. So I'm just going to go back to leaving it as its normal error, a comma splice. She looks comfortable, comma, she is teaching us from home. There we go. Let's leave it there as the model of what not to do, okay? And then here you have the options of what you could do instead. So moving on. Unit 6, we're looking at modifiers. So a modifier is a phrase that gives us extra information about a noun in the sentence. Depending on where you put your modifier, it may help give you information about the object of the sentence or the subject of the sentence, but depending on where you're putting your modifier, it may accidentally sound like you're describing something else in the sentence. So here's an example. I saw a dead skunk driving on the highway. Now obviously, we could assume that the person who wrote this sentence meant that they, the human, they were driving on the highway and they saw a dead skunk on the side of the road. However, because of where these words are in the sentence, it could be interpreted as the dead skunk is driving on the highway and the person is not driving. All right. So let's take a look at some modifiers. We'll talk about them. Going back to the hoarding of toilet paper, I wrote this sentence a while back. So he bought all the toilet paper. He almost bought all the toilet paper. And he bought almost all the toilet paper. Now, I want to bring your attention to this because the placement of a modifier, such as almost, can completely change the meaning of the sentence. If you say he bought all the toilet paper, it means he bought 100% of the toilet paper. He bought all the toilet paper. He almost bought all the toilet paper. When you put almost before your verb, it means that he didn't. He changed his mind. He almost bought all the toilet paper, but then he decided that would be silly. He bought almost all the toilet paper. It means he did buy some, but he didn't buy 100% of it. He left some on the shelf for other people. All right. So just with one word alone, we can change the meaning of the sentence. Even if it's the same combination of words, the order can change the meaning. So please be mindful of this if you're using adverbs like even. I see in a lot of emails from students, he even didn't call me. We wouldn't say that. We would say he didn't even call me. So even, almost, these types of words, they need to be carefully placed in a sentence because they will have different meanings unintentionally. All right. So we have two main categories of modifiers. There's the misplaced modifier, which is like this. It's a modifier that is in the wrong location. And along with almost, other words that can do that are just. So keep in mind, the word just has a few different meanings. We have only, recently, or fair. We can say just a minute, just about, meaning approximately. Just as well means it's okay, it's a good thing. And just help yourself means you're welcome, like welcome to it. Go ahead. So if we have the sentence below, 2 students requested a Zoom meeting, and I take the word just, I just want to try a little experiment here, okay? 2 students just requested a Zoom meeting. 2 students just requested a Zoom meeting. To me, this sentence sounds like, very recently, 2 students requested a Zoom meeting. Now, if I move just to a different location, just 2 students requested a Zoom meeting. If I say that, I mean only, and I'm kind of complaining about it, right? I'm online for office hours, and if students don't come online to see me during office hours, I might say just 2 students used office hours today, right? Only. Okay. 2 students requested just a Zoom meeting. This also just means only. 2 students requested just a Zoom meeting. They didn't request a phone conversation. They didn't request an email. They only requested a Zoom meeting. You see where I'm going with this, okay? So the word just changes the meaning of a sentence depending on where it is. We have many options of where we could put it. And coming back to our sample sentence from earlier, driving on the highway, I saw a dead skunk. This is a misplaced modifier because the phrase is there, all of the nouns are there, but the order of the sentence makes it confusing. Then we have a dangling modifier, and that's where you don't have all of the nouns in your sentence. Having read the book, the movie will be great. If I see this, I'm going to ask, who read the book? Now I can assume that it's whoever wrote the sentence. It's kind of implied. But the subject is missing. We have a missing subject. We need to add the subject into the sentence in order for it to be complete and so that the modifier is not dangling. Having read the book, I think the movie will be great. Here's one option or one example here from Shakespeare, okay? Sleeping in my orchard, a serpent stung me. Who is sleeping in the orchard? The serpent or me, right? So this just goes to show you that even Shakespeare has some grammatical errors in his writing. But we're going to try and avoid having it in our own. All right, I'm going to pause it here and have a new video for Unit 7 and 8 review.